that I was dying. And again, the classic, I'm too young to die. I'm 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought of my mother. You know, my mother, how's my mother going to receive this? And I was instantly beside her. I thought of my friends, and I was instantly beside each one of them. I was free of the limitations of time and space.
In pain?
No pain. Absolutely no pain. Then, as I said, I was out of the body. If I came back to my body, I was in pain. And it was bloody, and it was terrible, and it was terrible pain. So I kept going out of the body. I didn't want to go back. But then it reached the point where I was being drawn farther and farther away from my body. It was harder to get back to my body, and I kept moving toward this light. And then I had a moment of panic when I realized I am dying. And I was shown something I cannot put into words. I've written 134 books, thousands of articles and short stories. Words fail me. I was shown a series of geometric designs, is the only thing I can say. Seeing those designs somehow told me there was a form, a meaning, a sense to life, and I was in a state of ecstasy.
I've never heard anybody say that before, geometric designs.
Yeah,
I've heard a lot of testimony about near-death, but never geometric designs.
I've lectured, and sometimes people in the audience will, of course, there'll be just one or two that will say, I know what you're talking about, and I can't put it in words either.
Do you remember those things, kaleidoscopes, when you were a kid and you would turn them?
Yes.
Was it that kind of effect?
No. The closest I've seen, my wife, Sherry, does a healing seminar using fractal geometry.
Mm-hmm.
And the fractals that she projects, and she has marvelous results in the audience with people being spontaneously healed with this, are the closest that I've seen to these designs. At any rate, then, I was told or given to understand that I was to go back on the body, into the body. I came back into the body just as they were about to operate. And I was a very husky 11-year-old boy. And I remember sitting up, pushing two interns against the wall. And it was a Roman Catholic hospital. And one of the nurses then began to speak to me in a very soothing voice. And I've always, I guess, related to the feminine principle. And she's managed to calm me. And then I went to a beautiful place where they did the surgery, a beautiful valley filled with marvelous people and so forth, who kind of kept me company until I returned to the body this time to stay.
So you once again left. In other words, you came back, you actually became conscious, then once again unconscious.
Right.
I take it they gave you a general, and under you went, and away you went.
Yes. The nun then managed to call me. My first audience for all of this, Art, in my room was a child who was dying when I recovered consciousness in a couple days. And the nuns in this Roman Catholic hospital seemed to understand that I had been someplace, that I'd had this near-death experience. Though, of course, they didn't call it that then. And they asked me to speak to the parents. The child was already in kind of a comatose state, and to assure them, that their child would be going to a beautiful place, that I had been there and I had seen it, and I was able to bring them comfort. And somehow, at age 11, and that's what got me started. I realized if I shared these things, that it could bring people hope, inspiration, comfort, realization that there is more. We are souls inhabiting a fleshly body. There's more to us than even the most imaginative of us tend to believe.
Okay, I've heard, as a matter of fact, they even did a piece on this on 20/20 or 60 Minutes, forget what it was, doesn't matter. They had a doctor say, well, we believe this area that people go to, or this light they see, is the brain which is dying from the outside in, and as the outside dies, you see this core of light, which is in fact the core of your brain. In an attempt to explain it medically.
Right.
If you were standing in front of that doctor and listening to that, what would you say?
Well, I guess one thing I would say is you haven't been there. It's fine to theorize about these things.
Yes.
And I have the most beautiful imitation rose sitting in front of me, but it's not real. We can imitate, we can replicate, but then there's the real. Then there is that which is transformative. There is that which tells us that what we really know in our hearts, that we are more than physical things.
And so that's how strongly you feel about it. You would just say, you haven't been there, it is real.
Well, I think you understand, I've really stopped arguing with people at this point.
Because there's no point.
There's no point. I have had, and I certainly am a human being who enjoys, I don't like to say I told you so, and I try not to. But I've had, over the years, Art, so many people laugh at me because I talk about UFOs, laugh at me because I talk about ghosts,
I know.
Who then, after they've had their experience, they return and they don't care who argues with them because they've seen. Now they know. They have experienced. So I taught college for a number of years. And the bright young ladies in the department used to set me up with the scientists, so every lunch for me became a debating society. And when I was young and earnest, I did that. I debated, and tried to sway with intellect and knowledge and footnotes. And now I realize these are individual mystical experiences. And once you have had one, you cannot be dissuaded. You cannot be told. You don't care what someone thinks or if someone believes or disbelieves, because you know. It is that noetic sense of knowing. It's beyond reason. It's beyond intellect.
Yeah, it must be a great comfort. Brad, hold on one moment. We'll be right back to you. My guest is Brad Steiger. Stay right where you are. Did you know that early experiences was sort of cathartic for you?
Oh, yes. And again, I started to say, and I digressed and interrupted myself, which I'll probably do several times, Art.
That's fine.
Because I get so many ideas coming at me at once, so I'm just kind of stream of consciousness talker here. I was going to say that I don't feel privileged, but I feel blessed. I think every thinking human has these big questions, why are we here? Are we alone in the universe? Is there life after death?
That's exactly the premise or the premises of this program.
Right. Now, I was privileged to have all three of those questions, not because I'm special. This was a blessing to me, but they activated me because I had those questions answered before I was a teenager. By seeing that entity, I knew we're not alone. Someone else either shares or visits this turf on another dimension or another sphere of reality or from another world of reality.
We always get to those questions. Brad, before you go on from there, what is your best guess? Is it another dimension, another world, another what? Where are these beings, these entities from?
I keep coming back to multidimensional, Art.
More and more people are doing that.
Yeah, I put that forth in my books in the late 60s. And at that time, people weren't ready. I mean, friends like J. Allen Hynek and so forth said, man, you are really off the deep end. These are solid, clunk, physical. And, of course, Sherry was Allen Hynek's manager right up to the very end, working with him. And he came very much to see the multidimensional, the paraphysical dimension. And like I say, I have chased these beings, if you will, all over the world. And what I have seen, what I have witnessed with my own eyes, and of course we know, I think it was, I don't remember who it was, Arthur C. Clarke or someone who said that the science of, an advanced generation would look like magic to us. So nothing I can say is dogmatic, so please understand that. It seems what I have seen with my own eyes and my own experience seems to be multidimensional or paraphysical, more than it seems to be physical. But I'm not denying the physical. I would never do that. But I'm saying the bulk of what we see, I think, is multidimensional or paraphysical.
We're not gonna have time for you to answer this completely right now, but I had on my program the other day an individual, and I've had faxes from individuals lately, and I know this sounds crazy and it sounds like a TV series revisited, but they firmly, literally claim they are immortal. People who claim their aging process has halted. Is there such a thing in your view?
I think there are ascended masters who walk among us. I think the striving for immortality or reversing the aging process, I think at this point, I think I know to whom you're referring. I don't think it's happened yet. Time will tell, but I don't think we're going to see these people being able to demonstrate what they hope to.
A lot of them are not interested in demonstrating anything at all, and figure that they'll end up being guinea pigs if they... So I've been approached anonymously. I was just curious...
Well, I think... Okay, maybe... I would say that I think there may be such timeless beings walking among us.
Oh, that was the question. All right,
Yeah,
Brad. Stand by. You've got several minutes, so just relax and we'll be right back to you. This, of course, from near the area they call Dreamland, is the program we call Dreamland. We'll be
The year
to Brad Steiger. Brad, welcome back.
Thank you.
All right. With that many books under your belt, I don't know where to begin except... having had the early childhood experiences that launched you into this, for those that just joined us at this hour, you must have studied quite a few haunted houses. Haunted houses have absolutely fascinated me all my life.
Yes.
What story would you relate, or stories, of the best cases of haunting that you've run into?
Well, I would probably have to. I'm not good at choosing the best when I've been involved with so many. I know you understand that.
Sure.
I would relate probably, maybe kind of do a pastiche here.
All right, good.
What I've tried to do in this book, this current book, it is a collection of some of my favorite hauntings. And you put your finger on something, though, Art. I think when we talk about haunted houses, no matter how scary, if we see a movie about haunted houses or ghosts, on one level, they are telling us something very positive, that there is life after death, that something survives.
That's right.
So in the haunted houses, I really began with the whole idea. I mean, I was like a botanist. If I heard a rare flower was blooming in Brazil, then I went there to be there when the moon came up. So that was my attitude. I wanted to investigate as many as possible. And in those days, as I say, I was extremely intellectual. I mean, I was rationalizing, explaining away everything. And then I ran up against things that, could not be explained by squirrels in the attic or knocking water pipes. I mean, things that really were on the ken.
Sure.
So one of the houses we investigated, I'll start with this one. I find it one of the most dramatic.
All right.
Because I was, along with several other 200-pound men, lifted into the air by this entity. This was a situation where a number of murders over the years had taken place in this house. I mean, generations apart, but there seems to somehow be vibrations or energies that exist. And some people may not know when they move in that a murder has been committed in their home. And somehow they end up replicating the terrible deed that was done before. Well, this happened to be the case with this house. And in this, there had been a double murder in the garage. There had been a double murder in the basement. When we were called by the police and others to investigate, most of the phenomena were taking place in the basement. The woman would go down, turn on the faucets, and blood would come pouring out of the faucets. There seemed to be faces on the wall. There seemed to be things happening. But then this one back room in which the murder had taken place, both murders were of a jealous husband who came home and blew his wife and the lover away with a shotgun, even though it may have been a generation apart.
Most hauntings, Brad, seem to be, I've noticed, because of unrequited love, because of a violent death, because of... What do you think happens? Is it that the soul is somehow unable to move on?
I still have to intellectualize things. You have to bear with me. I think there are varieties of hauntings. I used to, when someone said a soul waiting to move on, I thought, oh, no, come on. Now I see that truly could be the case in some hauntings. I think when we're dealing with a ghost phenomena, a ghost is like a photograph. A ghost is a photograph that somehow replicates itself in the environment. People say, why are these ghosts always built around terrible things that have happened? Well, they're not. There are happy ghosts. I've gone to places and I hear from people all the time who have a ghost that they consider like a member of the family.
I've heard that too.
Yeah. So again, there are happy ghosts, but the ones that we seem to hear about, without question, happen around violent death, as you said, of some nature, great emotion involved. And unfortunately, too often the emotion of hatred. So in this particular case, now did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
Well, I think you did, but you threw a kink in it when you talked about happy ghosts, and
Yeah,
I do have heard of them. So what does that add up to then? Does that add up to some souls who want to be here can be here? Otherwise,
I don't have any final answers. I have
Okay.
to I have to put them in categories, my friend.
all right.
I have to say that there are those in which it seems there is a malignant energy.
Yes.
Sometimes I think the house itself hates people. I mean, I think there is an energy within a house. It may have nothing to do with the people involved, but somehow it poisons the people involved. For example, almost every major hotel, I don't know if you know this or not, I've run into this, has what they call the suicide room. Did you know that?
Have you heard of the Miss Powell Hotel here in Nevada?
No, but that may be one, huh?
It is one.
Okay.
It is one.
Where suicides happen, someone comes in, they feel depressed, they don't know, and suddenly they feel encouraged, they feel motivated to do the act. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
There seems to be a residue of emotions in some places. In this particular house, I went into the back room with a psychic medium to try to get some impressions, and the door kept trying to close. Now, to close, Art, it had to move uphill because this is an old house.
Yes.
And the basement, the floor was unlevel. So it had to move uphill, and then it had to, part of the cement kind of stopped it. So it normally, even if it did blow in the wind, it would be stopped by this little raising segment of the floor. But this would move itself and try to close and lock me into the room. Now, I had a friend of mine, Husky, former Green Beret, whose buddy always goes with me, used to go in these cases. There are some other good-sized men there. So I said, hold the door open. Don't let it close, because we're trying to pick up impressions here.
Sure.
When we finished, I said, okay, the darn door wants to be locked or closed. Close it and lock it. Well, that was the wrong thing to say, and I said it with a little too much of an attitude.
I see.
We went upstairs. We were just starting to pick up impressions in other parts of the house, and all of a sudden, bam, we hear in the basement. And then it sounds like King Kong coming up from those basement stairs, one by one.
Oh, that's where I'd be going.
The door, then, from the basement throws itself open, and every one of us in the room were lifted into the air and then dropped. Just as if to say, watch your mouth, Sonny. I had my friends then, they ran immediately down to the room that we had just locked, and the door had literally been thrown off its hinges.
Oh, my God. I see. Now, how did you manage to, at that point, even stay where you were? I mean, my feet would be saying, get me out of here.
In those places, Art, I have to dissociate myself. I mean, I know, again, through meditation, through prayer, through other areas, and this can be carried too far, and my wife is certain that I don't carry it, but I can enter a mental state where I just shut off my emotions, my reactions, and so forth, and just kind of become a camera, recording what I'm doing.
An observer.
An observer. Yeah. I'm in the scene, but I'm observing the scene. And I think that's part of being a writer, too. Because everything that happens to me, I know someday is grist for my mill. Everything that happened to me, someday I'm going to write about it. But again, I have to, and my wife is very good about saying, "Hey, no, you're not the Brad machine." As some of my friends have called me when I get into that. Oh, the Brad machine is taking over. So you're not the Brad machine now. You're back with us, and so forth. But in those cases, I have to, or like you say, I mean, I guess what it did for me too, because I had intellectualized this so much, I realized here again, my massive intellect didn't help at all in that case. I mean, that door went flying off its hinges. Something came up, something you could not understand, something you couldn't put in the test tube, something you couldn't put in a formula and explain away. There was an intelligence, there was a force, there was an energy in that house that didn't want to be messed with.
Obviously.
It wanted to be respected.
How many of you were lifted into the air?
Oh, let's see. It must have been 3 women and 4 or 5 men.
Wow.
And each of us men were 200-pounders.
Uh-huh.
All at once, my friend.
So you had insulted this entity.
Yes, I had. Yes, I had, and I have learned to be circumspect since. I was young then. I was much younger then. Well, then the explorations of different houses, different areas. Again, you were talking, how to, I said I don't try to convince people anymore. There was this one, the house, again, originally the police asked us to investigate at the time. Because so many phenomena. This was a marvelous home, beautiful home, in which a former local politician had lived. And when he passed away, his two maiden daughters lived there until their death. But several people had seen every night from the field in which the old stables had been, Papa would materialize, walk across the lawn and into the house, and then you could hear the daughters talking to Papa. I mean, he would come back each night. To them, who now were getting up in years themselves, I suppose to them they simply went back in time, and it was Papa coming in from checking the horses and having a normal evening with them. So we investigated. The caretaker was very cooperative. The police officer who had put me onto the case, was a good friend. He'd taken crop circle pictures for me. He'd taken he was the eye in the sky,
Sure.
the traffic airplane cop.
Yes, of course.
The eye in the sky.
Right.
So he was going to be with me. He was the one that had set that up, and I say he's been very cooperative, providing me flying different places, investigating UFOs. He suddenly had to be somewhere else that night. He was shifted in his duty roster, and a police officer took his place who thought we were all crazy. So he was with us during the day and thought, he just never resisted a chance, Art, to give me the needle. So that night, we're standing out there, the place where Papa is supposed to materialize or has been seen. And right as clockwork, you see these like little sparkly lights starting to swirl. And the policeman says to me, "What's that?" I said, "I don't see anything." Couldn't resist. It kept forming and forming until in front of us is this image, ghostly, sparking image of a man. And the police officer is going out of his head because I keep saying, "I don't see anything, officer." I couldn't resist because he's been giving me the needle all day. So just at the time he's pulling out a service revolver, I say, no. I said, "I see it. I'm sorry." But I said, "You kind of had it coming." And he said, "Yeah, I guess I kind of did." But he says, "What in hell are we seeing?" That's the first time I've ever put my hand on a ghost. I couldn't resist because the image was so tangible, like a hologram being projected.
I'm sure shooting at it would have been poorly advised.
Poorly advised, but I did stick my fingers into it, and it was a tingly, cold feeling. Like we feel the cold spot in haunted houses.
Kind of like I've got on my spine. Brad, hold there for just a second. Oh, boy, if that doesn't raise the hackles on the back of your... Oh, tingly, huh? When it comes to information on extraterrestrials, if you're like me, you just can't get enough. And I'm telling you, you've got to see the spine-chilling video, Area 51, the Alien Interview. Thousands of my listeners have already ordered this 65-minute documentary video containing the most convincing color footage of government agents interviewing a space alien inside the infamous secret base at Area 51. Leaked to the public by a heavily disguised and very frightened man who's known only as Victor. This unedited video will leave your heart pounding. See for yourself why Victor fears government agents might kill him in retaliation for releasing the dramatic footage. Is it real? Judge for yourself. The cost is only $19.95 plus shipping and handling. You'll want to watch it over and over again. I have. To order, call 1-800-510-3420 right now. Allow 2 weeks for delivery. The video's been featured on Extra and Strange Universe, but you only got a little piece here, you get it all. You can get it through this offer only. 1-800-510-3420. Area 51, the Alien Interview. 1-800-510-3420. Call now. In a tingling feeling. Now, see, you must have been in the classic Steiger mode, because there's no way in the world that I'd put my hand inside any entity.
Well, I have this insatiable curiosity.
Yeah, obviously. Obviously. You're lucky to still be here from my point of view.
Well, I've been told that by many people.
I'm sure you have. So, did you just hold your hand in there or pull it out, or what?
I was respectful. I'd learned respect by that time, you see. And I just had to. I mean, it was such where are you going to get an opportunity like this again? The majority of hauntings are sounds, their feelings, their moans, their groans.
Yes.
It is seldom, you get a really good materialization like that.
The physical manifestation.
Right, right. So, again, it paid me no attention, which, again, as I say, I have to put them into categories. This was like a strip of film art that was being reactivated and did the same thing every night. It walked then into the house, didn't open the door, but made the motion and walked through the closed door, and was then moving about. You could see the light. It was illuminated, and you could see it moving from room to room in the house. Now, again, we had a number of police officers. Again, interestingly, a couple of police officers came back after we had left and had the same experience.
Did they, Brad,
and burned rubber getting out of there.
I'm sure that would have been my reaction, right? Did they make a report on this, or how did they handle this officially?
No. Again, as I say, the majority are situations where the police or someone has called us in to try to determine, do an exorcism if possible. To my knowledge, even though these are police officers who have read my books, who have made contact, who believe in a larger reality.
You're probably, though, the last turn they make in trying to.
Oh, of course,
yeah.
of course, and again, that seems unfair on one level, but I understand that because everyone wants to explain it. And first you go to your chief and say, we have a haunting here, and he says, right, you've been working too hard, maybe you better take some leave. So this was almost all done unofficial, but I can say I've done it with police captains, lieutenants, chiefs of entire areas in major cities across the United States, but it's all done on the QT. Unofficially.
All right, and this is going to be unofficial too, Brad. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman died terrible physical deaths. O.J. Simpson's been acquitted of those murders. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, they died terrible deaths. Mm-hmm. Would you expect that to be the kind of case? And I'm going to hold, there's a good hook, we're at the bottom of the hour, but I'm going to ask you when we come back if you would expect that to be the kind of case that would produce after energy.
I'd be very pleased to answer that.
Good. And you will when we come back. We'll be right back.
This hour of Art Bell was recorded for rebroadcast at this time.
Again, Brad Steiger. Brad, kind of a provocative question about Nicole and Ron. But it really, when we look at what seems to cause energy to linger, it's just that kind of thing. What would you expect?
Well, as you might guess, every tabloid in this country and overseas has been calling us to give impressions which we have not on the case at all. But the way you have posed the question, I feel like answering it.
Good.
They are in what I would see as the category I call phantoms.
Phantoms.
We did, and I always try to be fair to our publishers, and we're here to talk about Awful Thing in the Attic. But a couple years ago, Sherry and I did a book called Hollywood and the Supernatural.
Yes.
And we went through the homes of Marilyn Monroe and Joan Crawford and some of the others that were haunted from the classic. There's something about that area. And we had several people kind of tune in on that. And we have some very provocative theories in that book as to why there are so many hauntings of this nature in Hollywood. But part of it has to do with the entities and the people involved. Now, here we have two young people who were ripped from life in their bloom. And the important thing here is we have had millions of people projecting energy onto them, projecting grief, projecting thoughts of love. And it seems, and I'll make this a prediction now, that it will not be long. We have people visiting the graves. I'm sure people will be having apparitions of both Ron and Nicole. I'm sure that people will be having visitations. Now, again, this falls in the area of phantoms. When an entity, when a person has so much energy projected, it really becomes like, try to follow me on this now, folks, a psychological marionette. Now, I say that it may have nothing to do with the actual spirits of Nicole and Ron, but so much energy has been projected on their idea form, on their spirit form, on their energy form, that people are going to begin to see phantoms, either both at the home where it occurred, cemetery, other places where they frequented. We can just say this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is going to happen. There is so much energy expended upon those two entities that it's unavoidable.
I appreciate your answering the question. Now, somebody just sent me a fax that jolted me hard, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned geometric shapes.
Mm-hmm.
A very good friend of mine is a fellow named Gordon Michael Scallion.
Mm-hmm.
You know Gordon Michael?
Surely.
Of him?
Well, I know of him.
Of him. When he was on the program, when he had the original experience, Brad, that took his voice away and began this intuitive life of his, in the hospital, I recall now, and the faxer recalls, that he said he saw geometric shapes.
Now you're giving me goosebumps.
I'm not kidding. During the experience in the hospital that began the whole intuitive life, that's what he saw was geometric shapes.
Isn't that incredible? I did not know that. I appreciate your listener sharing that and activating you to share it. That you gave me goosebumps.
All right. I would like, if you wouldn't mind, to kind of intersperse things with a few phone calls. Would you be up for that?
Oh, of course.
All right. Let me quickly give out the numbers. Here they are. First-time caller line for Brad Steiger, area code 702-727-1222. The wild card, direct dial lines, area code 702-727-1295. West of the Rockies, toll-free, it's 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, it's 1-800-825-5033. Having said that, here we go. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Hi.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
You're on the air. Where are you calling from?
Lexington, Kentucky.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, I was wanting to ask if he had seen the alien autopsy film and what his opinion of that was.
All right, that's a good question. It's a big, big current controversy, Brad.
I tuned in to have a good laugh, and Sherry and I thought, this is going to be really something hokey, and we were quite impressed by it. I think some of the statements by the special effects people who said they could get on their team, I think it's quite astounding. I think definitely we have to be cautious, but I'm not laughing, and I don't think it's an obvious hoax. If it is a hoax, it's just an incredibly, remarkably intricate one.
It is, and I had an FBI analyst on who analyzed some of the actual footage, and he said it would have had to have been exposed between 47 and 49. Now, if that's the case, it sure was an old hoax. I mean, why would somebody go through all that trouble to hold it for all that time?
Right. There have been all kinds of theories, all kinds of explanations, but I am not rushing to judgment on this one. I'm going to be very cautious. I'm sure the listener understands after 40-some years in this field, I've been led down a lot of primrose paths. So I'm being cautious, but I certainly was impressed by the film.
Well, good. All right. We'll let that stand. The other thing is that as more and more evidence, in other words, nobody has knocked a hole yet in it.
No.
And by now, as alarming as that presentation was, somebody should have knocked a hole in it. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Hi.
Hi. I had an experience in a seance, and the entity physically slapped a non-believer who passed his hand through it, and it is something I will never forget. We all saw it, and I know that they can get really, really puffy when you disrespect or whatever, and I just wondered what Mr. Steiger thought about that.
All right, where are you, ma'am?
Oh, I'm in Northern California.
Northern California. All right, that's kind of a duplication of your experience in a way.
Yeah, and I think the listener brings up a really good instance here. I want to really emphasize that one should be very controlled in these situations. One should be calm. I have people coming to me all the time describing incredible manifestations, and they are so frightened. The first thing I try to do is instill an attitude of calm, of acceptance, getting them to see, in a sense, really the miraculous thing they're seeing. But then there are the deceivers. There are the discordant energies that will assume happy ghost portrayal or whatever. So one must be cautious. This area is not one to have fun and games with. It is one to respect. It is one to recognize the sense of awe that is there, and really to approach it in a very reverential manner. Not fear, but certainly to understand that you may be dealing with something that you're not prepared to deal with.
Brad, what advice would you give to the people who usually in some sort of party atmosphere, about half-cropped, I suppose, sit down around a Ouija board and start playing? Would you have advice for these people?
Art, you could get me started on a lecture there, and I'll try not to do that, because I've had to come in so many situations and really work with, especially young people. I'm a father of 5, so I'm not picking on kids, and they've all grown up to be wonderful adults, but kids who get in, as you say, get into that party atmosphere and play around with it. This is not to play around with. And I slipped and said pray, because that's what I'm saying, is it should be done reverentially. Because I said to a dear Roman Catholic friend of mine who was playing with a Ouija board, I said, do you also play at Mass? Do you also have a little communion kit that you put on your television set? The person was a little offended, and I said, well, do you have to show the same respect when you try or think you're attempting to contact the spirit world? I've had to come in and really work hard with people who got themselves really screwed up psychologically, or who brought in discordant energies that really raised Cain. And I've had this happen with Phi Beta Kappas. I've had this happen with Dean's List A students who, again, thought intellectually they were superior to all this nonsense, and just were almost psychologically destroyed. So I say, don't play around with it.
Suppose somebody said, all right, fine, I take it seriously. I want to try to examine this world as Brad Steiger and others have done. I want a serious approach to it. How do you then advise them? We're not going to party it up, but we do want to try a seance, or we do want to try a Ouija board or something like that. Then what would you say?
Well, again, I'd be terribly arrogant if I said no one else should approach it in that way but me and a few others. I would never say that, because I think this enters into an area of what I call personal shamanism. I think that we all have these abilities. I think that we have the ability to reach out and touch higher intelligences, but this must be done again with prayer. Shaman friends of mine, who fast before they try this, who fast, go through a period of discipline, who go through prayer. I think it requires, I'm serious, I think it requires that same kind of attitude, that you become ministers, so to speak, that you become priests, that you become shamans, that you really approach this area with that kind of seriousness and that kind of responsibility. And then you have every right as a sovereign entity for you to expand your universe as well.
Just move carefully, cautiously,
move carefully. Move carefully.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
I hit mute here.
All right.
It's about symmetrical objects, and he's seen. I believe that's possible. I think there might be like mandalas.
Very much like. I did not at the age of 11 know mandala. But certainly I have seen some mandalas since that did resemble. Some of the Sufi art, even some Persian rugs, if you will, have come somewhat close. And I wondered if maybe some of those rugs were designed in an altered state of consciousness,
Yeah. I'm kind of a symmetrical being, my right half and left side are, they do things like I'll get a pimple on my right cheek, and a few days later it'll up here in the left cheek, same side, you know.
Oh, I've heard of people like that, yeah.
Yeah, so
Where are you?
Am I a symmetrical being?
Where are you? Mr. Symmetrical.
You could be.
Where are you calling from?
Boise, Idaho.
Boise, Idaho. All right. Brad, this also occurs to me. That's the reason I call resonates with me. I'll get a little skin mark on one side, then I'll get it in the same place on the other.
Interesting.
Interesting. What physically could you're not a doctor, I'm not a doctor. But what could explain that?
Again, I think it is your innate desire to be in balance. And that's really the key. I guess maybe I didn't mean to sound pompous a minute ago when I said how seriously we should take it, but the key to all of this is, as my friend Sunbear would say, the medicine priest, walk in balance. We have to be in balance before we approach any of these spiritual disciplines or spiritual tasks. I think you may have within you, my friend, just an innate desire to be in balance, which expresses itself even in physical rashes.
Boy, did you hit that one on the head. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Hi.
Hi, Art.
Where are you?
My name is Larry. I'm calling from Abilene, Kansas.
Hi, Larry.
I just wanted to say something about those the images, the concentric geometry.
No, we're getting a lot on that. Okay, Larry, let's hear it.
Well, I've experienced something like that myself. By the way, I'm also a Seneca Indian. So
I see. Okay.
But I get images like that whenever I'm in a feverish state. And it only happens not just the fever, but when I'm sleeping and feverish. I know exactly what you're talking about with those images.
Well, isn't that something? So few people have responded, and suddenly, look at the feedback we're getting tonight of people who have had that experience. I really appreciate your calling, all of you.
All right. I interviewed Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute. Mr. Monroe speaks of multi-levels of ascension. Is that your view of things? Are there multiple levels of ascension?
Oh boy, I think there almost have to be, Art. I've always avoided terminology like that. I try to keep everything as simple.
But we have to use words.
We have to use words. Certainly when you're in that, non-verbal state, when all of this comes together in eternal now, but then you do have to try to translate it. And I think there have to be levels. Just as I believe in powers and principalities, I believe in hierarchies. I'm reluctant, and there's one part of me, again, that mean, cold, intellectual part that doesn't want to, and then there's the part of me that experiences and explores, that says, you have to. I mean, you have to somehow try to put it, maybe you're dealing with the infinite, but you do have to put it in finite terms if you're going to communicate.
All right, are we at, do you suppose, the lowest level? In other words, in our physical bodies, are we at the lowest level? Is everything up beyond us, or are there lower levels, or what do you imagine? I know I'm asking for a lot of speculation.
Sure, I think there are lower levels. I think it is a really nifty thing to be a human being, but I think so few of us recognize our potential. And what I try to do in my books, if I don't sound presumptuous, and I hope I don't, is to get people to explore their potentials. I don't care. I've been to lectures where someone stands up, I disagree with you. I said, but did I make you think? The person said, yes, you did. And that's what I'm trying to do, is get people to explore their potentials, to realize that they can be so much more than they ever believed they can be. So I don't think we're at the lowest level. I think we're at a lower level than the higher beings around us. But I think we really are a transitional species. I really think we are the link between ape and angel.
All right, hold it right there. That's a great break place. Brad Steiger, the world-famous Brad Steiger, is my guest, and we'll be right back. Brad, whether a big fan of yours, by the way, whether you have read a book called Nothing in This Book Is True, but It's Exactly How Things Are by Bob Frizell.
I don't think I've read that one, no.
Because he discusses, you might want to, he discusses the same sort of geometric patterns that you've been talking about.
Okay.
So here it is. It's just a flood of information. You say it, Gordon Michael Scallion says it, and all of a sudden we're flooded.
Yeah.
Let's try a quick call, see if we have time. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Good evening.
Hi, Art. Hi, Brad.
Hi.
I'm calling from California.
Okay.
And I met Brad in 1983 at a Dick Stutzman conference in Arizona, and he told me that I was telling him of some of the things that had happened to me, and he told me to write about it. And I am a writer, but I find that I always have a writing block when it comes to the abductions that I've had and other things.
It's a good question, Brad, when you're trying to apply, obviously you're successful with that many books. How do you find words to describe the indescribable?
Well, that's the challenge. That's what writing is all about. It's translating the thought, that, non-physical vibration in our brain to paper, and then that's only the half of it. It has to resonate with the same buzz in the people who read it. So again, the people who are blocked, I kind of do a Zen thing. I try to write at the same time every day, but I certainly, put myself into a very relaxed state. I don't intimidate myself with that doggone white paper staring at me, and I just say, I can do it, and I've got something to share. I've got something worthwhile. People, I love them, and that they are. If I'm excited about a subject, I just know there's someone out there who's excited. I've only written, the only model and guide I've ever had, all these books, Art, is I write a book that I would like to read. And that's been my guide from book 1 to book 134 now.
So a little meditation on our part. All right, Brad, sit tight. We'll be back to you right after the top of the hour. And we are going to have to take a break here, and I want to take one more opportunity, if I could, please. My publisher notified me that the first edition of my new book is going to be very shortly gone. I want to thank everybody who has gone crazy buying it. It's out shipping this week. If you would like a copy of my new book called The Art of Talk, which covers Dreamland topics, covers talk radio, covers my life. And by the way, we've got a photograph of a ghost in there. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Photograph of a ghost. Boy, have I got a good one. It's in my book, and we'll talk about it when we come back. My book, if you'd like to order it, The Art of Talk, call now. 1-800-864-7991. That's 1-800-864-7991. Back to Brad Steiger. Hi, Brad.
Hi.
Your latest book is called The Awful Thing in the Attic. God, what a great title.
Yeah.
It is a compilation, you say, of some of the best of the best.
Yeah, some of the things we've been talking about tonight. And
and you have now. Let me tell you, and then we'll give out the number for your book.
Great.
But in the book that I am just now coming out with, I have a picture, Brad, a stonemason down in Arizona. Had done some work in about 100-year-old home down in Arizona. And he took a photograph. He was proud of his work, so when he was done, he took a photograph of the stonework. And I'm telling you, Brad, I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I've seen a lot of things portending to be ghosts.
Right.
But this was clearly a kind of smoky, I would describe it as a smoky, semi-translucent being. I mean, no question about it. I mean, clear as it can be. I put it in my book, and I every time I look at this photograph, it sends chills down my spine. This is a ghost.
Yeah. Well, I've got some of my favorites in the book, as you might suspect.
Sure.
And then I have the handwriting of a ghost. The famous Borley Rectory in England, called England's most haunted house for years. The entity began writing when one pastor or Episcopalian moved in, and his wife seemed to really somehow activate the sympathy, sort of a simpatico rapport with the entity, and began to write to Marianne, the pastor's wife. So one of the investigators of that famous case, Borley Rectory burned some years ago, but sent me specimens of that handwriting of a ghost. I've included that in the book as well.
All right. How do people get your latest?
Well, hopefully, as with all the others, it would be in their favorite bookstore. But if not, if I may give out an 800 number.
You may.
It is 800-777-3454.
Well, that's a good number.
1-800-777-3454.
And they want to ask for?
They They want to ask for the awful thing in the attic.
Huh. You know, how come you decided to call that instead of the awful thing in the basement? Everybody knows that bad things are usually in the basement.
Yes, but in a house, in architecture, what is the attic? What does that represent? The mind. So the basement is the earthy part where maybe demons exist, but the demons that exist in the mind might be even more fierce than those that exist in the basement.
Oh, boy. You wouldn't go so far as to say that the better things are in the attic and the more evil, darker things are in the basement?
That would be one level, but if we look at it architecturally, the attic would represent the psyche or the mind or the soul. So part of the book is also symbolic art of saying, you know, we have to keep our attic clean.
All right, back to a couple of calls.
Surely.
East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Hi.
Hi, just a thought. You were talking about the geometric images earlier, and I was wondering if there might be any connection between them and crop circles.
Ah. All right, where are you, sir?
Abilene, Kansas.
Abilene, Kansas. It's a good question, Brad.
It is a good question. These were so colorful and so intricate. Now, I have seen some very intricate crop circles, but who can say? Who can say? Maybe this is the primum mobilium. You know, maybe that's what I touched, and maybe that's what's showing up in the crop circles.
Have you seen images?
That's an interesting thought.
Have you seen images of crop circles that remind you of the shapes you saw?
No. The only thing I've ever seen that reminds me, as I say, is these fractal geometric designs, fractal geometry.
All right, here's one that was inevitable. Hi, Art, love the show. Calling my friends to let them know how to tune in now. Please ask your guest who he believes Jesus was.
Jesus is whomever you wish him to be, whomever you want him. This is a powerful energy source. If he to you is, as he says, the Son of Man, who comes to tell us that all those things that he did, we can do if we follow his way in his path. To me, Jesus is our photograph of God.
That's wonderful. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Hi.
Yes, hi. Brad, years ago you wrote an introduction to a book written by Paul Twitchell called In My Soul, I Am Free. And
Yes,
for the listeners who don't know, Paul Twitchell is an out-of-body traveler a la Robert Monroe. And I was wondering, since Paul Twitchell left the physical plane, I believe it was around 1971, if you could share some of your experiences with him. I have heard incredible things about this man who I even heard that was able to change the local weather according to his wishes, and several other phenomenal stories.
Well, I guess you know from reading the introduction, I was present one of those times when he changed the weather.
That's what I recall.
I would like to hear about that myself.
Well, Paul Twitchell was the living Eckmaster of Eckankar. I was privileged to know him for a number of years. He was a fascinating fellow. He never pressured me at all to become an Eckist or to join his particular movement. I guess he recognized me as a young scholar of the unknown, and we became friends on that level. We would meet just as friends in different cities in the United States, just to spend time discussing these kind of phenomena. He had, well, you talk about people who walk through time and so forth. I have named our organization Time Walker because I told Sherry when I met her, I'm not saying I'm one of the immortals, Art. I'm not saying, but I've always felt as though I'm walking through time, and I think Paul Twitchell was one of those who walked through time.
Well, the lady said something about you were present when the weather was changed.
Well, I was present a number of times when, like a powerful shaman, I've seen shaman do it as well, but Paul Twitchell had that ability to seemingly reach up and arrange the thermostat the way he wanted to change from rain to sun or vice versa, depending upon. He was a remarkable man, and I really felt as though I was privileged to know him at a very important developmental time of my life, and I've included material about him in a couple new books that will be coming out, as a matter of fact.
Brad, I've got to ask you about something real serious, very serious. I have been watching over many years now, and because of the nature of the work I do, I'm on top of the news every day.
Right.
I have never in my life seen as many volcanic eruptions, as many earthquakes, as many hurricanes. I believe we're down to P in the.
That's right.
In the, we have, and in all of record keeping, Brad.
That's right.
It's never been. What's going on?
Well, I was privileged some years ago. Some scientists brought me 2 semi-trailer truckloads of material in which they had been studying with a staff of thousands the weather. I put this together in a book called Roadmap of Time, which outlined everything that's happening now. But I guess it scared the heck out of everybody. It was a big seller in Britain and Europe, but it did nothing here.
Well, it's scaring me. I call it.
This was done. The Nazis tried to steal this information in World War II. These 2 scientists in Chicago had staff of thousands put all this together, and I put it. Their heirs brought me this material. I spent 2 years putting it together. Called Roadmap of Time, which I thought was a tricky little title too, but France and England loved it. But
what was
anyway? This is time cycles, Art.
Yes,
and
sir.
we're entering a period of volcanism.
Yes,
we're entering a period of volcanism and dramatic Earth changes. And it's nothing that's happened because we're evil and nasty. It's just the roadmap of time. It's the calendar of time. It's just like winter comes for us here in the Midwest, not because of any particular thing we have done or haven't done. It's the season. This is a season for volcanism and storms and hurricanes, even before we started mucking it up with global warming and so forth.
Brad, is there, as we understand it, and there are the Mayan calendar, and people who feel there may be errors in the Mayan calendar and feel that literally the end of time is not far ahead?
I feel it's a transition. I'm the eternal cockeyed optimist, and I think we're on the very brink of those. I think we're going to see more and more people beginning to make quantum leaps. I think we are in the process of evolving from Homo sapiens to Homo spiritus, thinking man to spiritual man, and regretfully, in every quantum evolutionary leap forward, we will pray that as many people will be open to this and prepare for this as possible. We know that some people will resist. Some people perhaps will not be prepared for that transition, but we do have an opportunity. I don't think we're coming to the end of the world. I think we're coming to a dramatic transitional phase.
Well, certainly something. Economically, politically, socially, every area you look at right now, I have sort of summed it up by calling it the quickening. It feels like a quickening. Things are
That's
moving.
That's a good term, Art.
Yeah, they're moving faster and faster and faster, and it's headed towards something.
Yeah, no, that's a very good term. The number one thing, aspect, question, comment that I get in the hundreds of letters I get every week is expressing what you have just said, my friend. That time is accelerating, that people know they're supposed to be doing something.
Yes.
The number one thing I get asked is, what is my purpose? What is my mission? And again, I'm not trying to be coy, but I have dealt with this in so many books, and I do refer them to certain books where I do try to show people techniques and exercises whereby they can hopefully achieve greater insight into their mission and purpose in life.
So, more spiritualism.
Well, I think we are here for that reason. I think this is Schoolhouse Earth, and I think we are here given opportunities for graduation and progression. Or we have the opportunity to become extinct as the dodo bird, if that's our want.
And yet, more and more these days, Brad, there seems to be evidence of the opposite. Someone takes a wrong turn down an alley and children are shot by gangs who have nothing better to do.
This is all part of this unrest. And as I said, these scientists, Art, had studied every aspect of human endeavor, including sociological eruptions, including political unrest, including all of these things. I don't think I've ever been so disappointed. I've been so blessed to have so many of my books achieve, hundreds, thousands, million copies and so forth. This book did nothing. I think it's one of the most important, and I'm not bragging because I edited it. I took this material. I'm not taking credit for any of this material. I was privileged to put it together, and as I say, I got permission from France, from England, for her. Oh, can we quote this? Can we quote that? There were maps and diagrams and charts. It just disappeared.
Okay, here's something that I want to ask you that I've been wondering about myself. I have had great success, Brad. You have had great success in your field. Are there quiet moments where you wonder and ponder why and why you're so successful, whether something special has been given to you or whether you owe something because of it. Or I think every person who achieves some level of success has serious moments of pondering why.
Oh, all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
I felt I was, when I died at age 11, I came back an ower. I mean, I felt that I had the responsibility to share this, to share this good news, that we are more than physical things, that we are spiritual beings, that we have an opportunity to help others. I think the bottom line is sharing and being one with others. The oneness is the important thing to me. And again, I feel blessed, and I feel that people say, my goodness, why do you keep going? Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep... And I can't tell enough. I can't share enough. I'm just... and fortunately, my wife is the same way. She had near-death experience as children. She is an ordained Protestant minister, and I guess we are both just on fire with the zeal of sharing. This is our mission. See, we look upon it as a mission or a ministry, but I think people will agree, and I get wonderful letters saying, we're so happy, you're so objective, you don't push, you just present. And that's what I try to do, because I mean, if I sit down beside someone who says, I have the only answer, I have the only way, I know I'm going to get off that bus. I mean, I'm not going to go on a bus trip with someone who has all the answers, the only way, the only purpose.
Those people worry me as well. Stand by, Brad. We'll be right back. When it comes to information on extraterrestrials, if you're like me, you just can't get enough. And I'm telling you, you've got to see the spine-chilling video, Area 51, the alien interview. Wait a minute. Let me do that. Okay, now you're on the air, I think.
Hello.
Hello, where are you?
I'm from Illinois.
Illinois.
On satellite.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Art.
Yes.
Mr. Steiger.
Yes.
You mentioned a Mr. Sun Bear.
Yes.
Who I believe established the Bear Tribe Medicine Society.
That is correct.
Who believes that a cycle of civilization is coming to a close.
Mm-hmm.
And you are familiar with the Hopi prophecies of a day of purification.
Most certainly.
And the coming of the blue star Kachina.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a strong belief amongst the Hopi Indians and other Indian tribes that this Hail Bob could be a fulfillment of their prophecies.
Oh, now you have, what tribe are you?
I am just researching.
All right.
Okay, because you've picked up an accent, a tribal accent there. I was trying to figure out which one.
I thought so too, Brad. There is a big comet on the way called Hail Bob. You know about it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Could it be this blue star?
Well, again, my wife is half Chippewa, as well as being Swedish and French. So, and she has worked with shaman and medicine people of many tribes, as have I. And I love these people, and I feel at one with them. I feel these things are very much symbolical. I feel that we are in that time of great purification. Purification is what I choose. Not the end of the world, but another time of purification in which, and I always hate to be doomsday at all, but as I say, perhaps not everyone
is going to make it through.
Is going to make it through, but a time of purification, my wife and I feel is coming. And maybe this comet will herald it.
All right, maybe it will herald it in. More of Brad Steiger and Dreamland in just a moment. Now to Brad Steiger. Brad, I've got a fax here from Southern California, and it says in one of your books, you commented on the fact that you thought one of the most supposedly famous hauntings of all time, Amityville, was a hoax. Would you be willing to comment?
I don't know if I ever said that in one of my books, but I may have repeated in the lecture, and perhaps someone heard it there. The Lutz family, who were the recipients, if that's the word, of that haunting, which was made into a book, came to one of my workshops and asked to speak to me afterward, and their contention was that it had been grossly exaggerated for purposes of dramatic presentation, and that many of the things had not happened the way they had been portrayed. But I don't think I have ever written about it in one of my books. But the people involved themselves told me that they felt it was, let's say, exaggerated.
I presume that you try to be very careful about exactly that when you're relating accounts, for example, in the awful thing in the attic.
Exactly.
All right, very good. Somebody's been waiting a long time here. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Hi.
No problem with the length of call. My name is Jack, calling from Olympia, Washington.
Hello, Jack.
Hi, Jack.
And Mr. Steiger.
Yes.
I'm wondering if your familiarity with an author by the name of Brant, B-R-A-N-D-T, Kyle from Berkeley, California, published The War in Heaven, 1989, his own press called SR Press. He, like yourself, has an attention toward, addresses the importance of attention in manifestation and how it empowers the manifestation. And that perhaps there might be, rather than a field of daisies, at the edge of the cliff beyond that, in empowering manifestations and the cultural symbols that we pay attention to, and aside from rather than the idea of perceiving conflict as empowering the dark side, rather than acknowledging that there is a war in heaven and that this time of transformation might be a final contest.
All right.
And that this is that he names it the invisible college, that which would further our race and help us to transform, and what he calls a group of spirits or manifestations called the elementals that have hung around too long and begun to pervert and harvest human attention through our symbols.
Well, you're absolutely right. You've read enough of my books to know that I have dealt with exactly that topic and that theme very often, and very much believe that that there is a war in heaven, if you choose to put it in those terms, that there are powers and principalities, and that we, as human beings, may indeed be the prize, and the prize of war, so to speak, the spoils of war, if you really want to be denigrating, I guess, to some people's ego, and so I very much believe that. A British author, you said something about a staggering amount, Art. He has written a book called The Dark Gods, in which he refers to the Steiger effect, which in one of my books I say, again, how we deal with negativity is to confront it, always being cautious and so forth, but how, we must drive it back. So I definitely, I don't think I'm familiar with this particular book. Again, please forgive me because people send me books and things. I love it, but sometimes I can't always keep up. But certainly the caller is right. My wife and I have dealt with that particular theme in a number of our books.
Well, if it is a war and we are the prize, seems like we ought to be rooting for one side or the other, eh?
Well, and that's the ticklish part, because by their works you shall know them. But again, as my wife always says so well, how does the negative, the dark side present itself? It will never present us as ugly monsters. There's always going to be the seductive, beautiful things of that they will throw at us to delude us and seduce us.
Well,
so it requires balance.
Okay.
It requires discipline and discernment.
Try this on for size. I'll let it haunt you the way it has haunted me.
All right, my friend.
There is a friend of mine, the son of Bill Lear, John Lear. I'm sure you've heard the name.
Yes, I know John.
On one of my programs years ago, he said something that I'll never forget. He said, Art, it is my feeling, or I've been told, let me get this straight, that when you die or have a near-death experience, the light is a trick, and you should go to the darkness.
I could not accept that from my personal experience, Art, but I would translate what John said, because I know John. We are certainly acquaintances. I would interpret that as continual vigilance. As I said, discipline, discernment, and we must be vigilant always. One of my books, I guess, that I resonate with in terms of the title is One with the Light, which as we speak is being made into a pilot film for hopefully we'll sell it, there will be a series, which deals with the near-death experience, but also the entire aspect of what it tells us about ourselves, about what we really are and who we really are, and how to utilize this energy. So certainly I would not say go to the darkness. I would say learn to discern and discriminate who the players are. As I've often said, when some people have said, I want to go for a ride in a UFO, and if the UFO lands, I will get in it and go off to this. And I said, well, before you do, ask to see the driver's license. I mean, you want to know who you're getting on board with.
There you are. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Where are you calling from, please?
Utica, New York?
Utica, all right. Turn your radio off.
Okay.
There you go. Go ahead, ma'am.
I wanted to ask Mr. Steiger his opinion on meditation or transcendental meditation.
All right. I guess we've been talking a lot about that. In other words, that is the path to the greater understanding, is it not?
Well, certainly meditation, transcendental meditation may refer to a particular kind. I am not conversant enough. My friend John White has written a whole entire book about transcendental meditation. But meditation itself, I think, is the discipline Paramahansa Yogananda Self-Realization Fellowship that I resonate very much with. And certainly Yogananda, speaks of meditation. I think the Master Jesus, I think all the great avatars have told us meditation is one of the most important keys.
Does that help you?
Could you recommend a couple books on meditation or what your purpose in this world is?
All right.
Well, on meditation, I would recommend the book of my friend John White, who has a couple books on what is meditation. And John is a very sensitive and devout person personally, so I would recommend one of his books. John W. White.
John W. White. All right, excellent.
What is meditation?
What is meditation? On the wildcard line, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Hi.
Hi, Art, Brad. This is Elizabeth in Vancouver.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. When you started talking about the geometry, I burst into tears. What a relief. I thought I was the only one.
Now, isn't that amazing? I can't get over this. I'm getting goosebumps again, Art, because I've been talking about this for years, and I've had a handful of people relate. This shows what wonderful audience you have in your show, my friend.
Well, it was on my wall for, I'm going to estimate 3 days. It was like a glowing crystal mural, and it was very beautiful. I thought of it as Hungarian embroidery or crystal beads until you mentioned the Persian rug. That fits in with it. Also, mandalas.
Well, I was trying to get some kind of image maybe people could relate to.
Right, mandalas come in rectangles too, but
surely they do.
I have to say that every time, and Art and I go around and around on this point, every time I hear these apocalyptics called the Art Bell Show, and it's incessant, this image that I actually was able to trace with my fingers, that I was able to meditate on, it was home. What I can remember of it, my impression is that it was home, earth, trees, community, nature, and a lot of stuff about technology. It was all encoded, and this message streamed through my mind for these hours that I spent with this. I was fasting and meditating, and I was by myself, and I had a lot of time to spend with this. And I don't see the apocalypse, and I would like to suggest that you and Art and all these other, what's his name,
I think if you heard me say, I said I'm the cockeyed optimist who believes in transition rather than termination.
Exactly. Look, and to be clear for my audience, I have never said it will be apocalyptic. I have never said it will be the end of the world. All I'm noting in the job I'm doing is that there is a definite quickening. I'm not saying where it's going.
Right.
I'm not that kind of messenger. I don't have that kind of message. I'm just an observer.
Nor do I.
I'm just an observer, and I know something is happening, but I don't know where it's going. So I call it the quickening, for lack of a better term.
And I would relate to that, but I like qualification because so many people have portrayed me in that light, too, and I think it's a misinterpretation. When you say quickening, they say, oh, that's quickening to the end. I'm saying quickening to the transition, if you heard me say to a quantum leap forward. So that ain't the end. That's the beginning, a new beginning.
All right, good. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Where are you?
I'm in Florida.
Florida, okay.
Okay. I've had a number of experiences, too. And the one thing that I can say is that, like he said, you really have to be kind of reticent about it. And the one thing that really seems to get me through is, you have to pray for the love of God.
Mm-hmm.
And...
That's number one.
That's number one. And, if this end thing is coming, God will find you. It's not a matter of going into this spaceship or another.
No, as my wife says, and I agree, she says, whether this is happening, whether you fall into a volcano, the important thing is where you are with God your rightness with God, because we are souls inhabiting physical bodies. So the important thing is always, every day is Judgment Day, and live that way so that you're always right with God. That's number one.
All right. Brad, stand by. We'll be right back to you. My guest, the world-famous Brad Steiger, more in a moment. Give me a minute to tell you about Ruthie and Larry Brown and GMX. It is a remarkable technology that works. I've had it in my home for years, in my hot tub for, I don't know, a year and a half, easily. It conditions water magnetically. It does it by magnetic arrays that are placed on the incoming water pipes to your home. Now, on the first day or two or three, as the water flows, and by the way, it works better the more water flow you have, the magnetism begins to go to work on the minerals in the water. That, by the way, is what causes hard water or scale calcium alkali, whatever you want to call it. The magnetics go to work on it, and it stops sticking to anything. It's still in the water, by the way, but it no longer sticks to anything. So effectively, you get all the benefits of conditioned water without any of the drawbacks, one of which is you really need minerals in your water when you drink it. You just don't want it to stick to stuff, causing circles in the john, causing white spots on your car and glassware when you wash it, that sort of thing. All the problems associated with hard water. Now, they understand you might not believe. I don't blame you. It's hard to believe, but I'm telling you it works. So they give you a 90-day ironclad money-back guarantee. If it doesn't do exactly what I say it does, you get your money back. The number to call is 1-800-406-0469. That's 1-800-406-0469. The most beautiful gold coin in the world, in my opinion, is the St. Gaudens Double Eagle. It holds just about 1 ounce of solid gold within, but it's absolutely beautiful, and people have sought after it for years for its beauty and history, and of course the fact that it contains 1 ounce of solid gold. Now, last night I gave a pretty good example, I think, of why gold is good. Back in 1907, you could take that gold coin, and a $20 gold piece, actually, and you could buy a fine suit of men's clothing. Today, you can take that very same $20 gold piece and buy with it a fine suit of men's clothing. Now, a $20 bill, paper money from that time, would buy what $20 buys today, and it sure as hell is not a fine suit of clothing, is it? So that tells you why you should own gold. These particular coins are graded as MS62 by PCGS. They are being sold by North American Trading, my sponsor, at cost. It's the one potato chip theory. In other words, once you've, had one in your hand, they know you're going to want more, or hope you will want more. Whether you buy one only at this incredible price, or you buy more at a higher price, because this is a one-time deal. One per family, that's it. The offer will soon expire. It's $445 each, plus $9 shipping and handling. If you want one, because it is one per family, call 1-800-359-4255. That's 1-800-359-4255. Back now to Brad Steiger. Brad, here's a question that I guess it could be. Do you have a mailing address? Somebody wants to know whether you've got a fax number or a mailing address or some way somebody can correspond with you.
Boy, someone's in tune, because I was just going to say, might I give a mailing address? Because these people with their geometric designs and so forth have got me excited here. People can write for a list of our books and so forth to Post Office Box 434, Forest, like a bunch of trees, Forest City, 2 words, Forest City, Iowa, 50436.
Better repeat it.
Post Office Box 434, Forest City, Iowa, 50436. And as my Meskwaki neighbors say, that's our native tribe here, Iowa means this is the place.
And for the awful thing in the attic, I want to give you a chance to give out the 800 number one more time.
Thank you, my friend. It's 800-777-3454.
Excellent. Let's squeeze in a couple more if we can. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Hi.
Yes, Brad. I was wondering if you ever got together, on your hauntings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you ever heard of the aura imaging cameras?
Oh, that's new. There is some new camera I've been hearing about, Brad, that will take pictures of auras.
Well, I know a number of people who have cameras like that who certainly have done some interesting work, yes.
And they're working on I believe they have a camera that takes it in movement, like a movie camera.
Well, now that would be a new development, and that would be fabulous.
Yeah, in the haunting.
Uh-huh.
And like that slab, where the faces show up. And
right. Right.
Like
now that would really be fabulous. If we did not have anything like that then, and of course I have worked with some friends who have for example, in our book, Strange Powers of Pets, we have some of the aura images from different animals that an associate of mine took with an aura imaging camera. But to get it on a video or motion, that would be fabulous.
All right.
Like antioxidants even?
Let me ask you this. You mentioned animals. Animals have auras?
Well, in these pictures, they certainly showed up beautifully. Horses, cats, dogs.
All right. Does that... now I'm going to ask you to go out on a limb with Shirley.
Yeah, now the great ontological question.
That's right.
Do animals have souls?
Inevitable, yes.
They certainly do have something, because in our books we've written 3 books now, and people have written and shared the most beautiful stories. They certainly must have spirit forms, whether it's a group spirit or, I'm so closely connected with my pets that I know there is a bonding. I know there's something between us, and it's more than the physical.
I agree. I have cats as well, and there's a bonding that defies words, actually.
Yeah, if you apply yourself. If again, people say, "Oh, my cat does nothing but eat and dig in its," Well, that's where you relate to it. You have to with your pets. You have to recognize who they are and respect them as sovereign entities.
Would an aura be consistent with a soul then, in your view? Human or animal?
I'm not certain about that.
Or just a presence of life force?
Yes. I mean, certainly it is that, Art. Certainly it is that.
All right, let's try one more quick one. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Brad Steiger. Where are you calling from, please?
California.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, geometric figures, you mentioned that. I was wondering about geometric figures with using the hand. You've seen some historical paintings, such as from Buddhism or something. Seems like where they do things with the fingers. Is there energy in that? It seems like there's something there.
All right, going to have to be a fast answer.
Well, I'm sure there's something there. I'm sure all these are connected. I think all people who are, seeking the spirit, who emphasize the spirit, who recognize this, I think, again, that there is rising to a higher level of consciousness where all is one, and we all have the ability to tune into that if we practice discipline, discernment, and if we approach these things with a reverence which they deserve. I think all of these avenues and approaches have merit.
Brad, it has been such a pleasure having you on, and there was not enough time.
We could go all night.
Yeah, we could, and that's the next thing I wanted to mention. I would like to book you on to Coast to Coast, my regular syndicated show, if possible, so we'll be giving you a call and arranging that sometime perhaps within the month of October.
Wonderful.
Seems like the right month for it.
And it certainly is a pleasure to be on your show. I say my fan mail for months has been asking, when are you going to do the Art Bell Dreamland show?
All right, well, you've done it, and now we'll work on Coast. Brad Steiger,
great.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
And a very good evening to you, actually morning, I suppose, there where you are now. All right, well, that's it, everybody. I'm sorry, we are out of time. Some sort of magnetic deviation. And for that reason, I would like to have any of you in the audience who watch compasses carefully, please note and fax or get hold of me if you too are experiencing some sort of magnetic deviation. Whenever this occurs, and it's occurred several times a year, we try to document it by the audience, and so we'll do that right now. Back now to Linda Moulton Howe. And Linda, if we are not related to ancient man, then who the hell are we related to?
Exactly, and that's what I'm leading to. And I just wanted to do a footnote to what you were saying about the magnetic compass anomaly.
Yes.
Jean Bilodeau, a reporter in Cedarville, California, has gone to several mutilation sites in the last 2 years, and she has taken a compass. And now I believe she has 3 in which there has been the same kind of compass deviation, and we're talking about a serious compass deviation at the mutilation sites. And one of the biophysicists studying this thinks this is relating to some sort of a plasma vortex with microwave energy at those sites. But that is another area where we're also looking for research on these magnetic deviations.
All right.
I had just asked Dr. Ann Stone what, for her, is the greatest mystery about Neanderthal.
And here comes that answer.
Well, you know, why did they go extinct? Why were they outcompeted by Cro-Magnon? You know, were they so adapted to perhaps a cold environment and particular type of lifestyle that they couldn't adapt to changing climatic conditions? You know, why didn't they make it? Of course, most species on this planet don't make it, so maybe why we made it is a better question.
Yeah, why did Homo sapien make it and Neanderthal not make it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question.
Well, some government insiders claim to have answers to that question. Back in April 1983, when I was developing a television special for Home Box Office, one of my first meetings was with Air Force Office of Special Investigations Agent Richard C. Doty at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque. I discussed what happened in my book, An Alien Harvest, but one part is important to repeat now in light of this new DNA research. During that meeting with Doty at Kirtland, he handed me several pages from an envelope that he said his superiors had asked him to show me, entitled Briefing Paper for the President of the United States of America on the subject of, it was either identified or unidentified aerial vehicles. It discussed the United States government's retrieval of crashed alien discs and their non-human occupants since the 1940s. At least one extraterrestrial being was supposed to have communicated about its civilization's long-term involvement with Earth. One of the sentences I have never forgotten said literally, quote, "These extraterrestrials manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien," unquote. Perhaps that artificial manipulation is the missing link in our evolution and would explain why Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon overlapped 30,000 years ago, but are not linked genetically.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're woefully out of time, Linda.
Well, thanks for letting me overlap, and for people who would like to get in touch with me on any of these subjects tonight or any Earth mysteries, please contact me at fax number area code 215-491-9842. And for people interested in my books, including An Alien Harvest, which does discuss a lot of this, it's 800-864-7991. That's 800-864-7991. And Art, it will be very interesting to see how more DNA research continues to come up with some of these surprising findings that may in the long run support our strange Homo sapien origins.
That's strange, all right. Linda, as always, thank you. Look forward to next week.
And thank you, Art.
Take care. That's Linda Moulton Howe in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and that is an incredible thing to contemplate. And while we're on the subject of DNA, I would like to recommend to my audience, and I have no interest in doing this other than I just read it, and it's an incredible book. Go out and find it. It's called The Miracle Strain. As a matter of fact, I really ought to find and interview the author of this book. I'm sorry I don't have the author's name. I'll get it and get it on the air for you here shortly. It's called The Miracle Strain, and I suspect it's available generally, nationally. It is a remarkable story of DNA. It is fiction, but in view of what Linda just said, perhaps not so much fiction in the end. Absolutely fresh flowers. And then one more message, and then Dr. Eldon Taylor will be with us, and just wait till you hear what he's going to talk about and how it may verify a lot of what we've done here with other guests. The subliminal information processing while a practicing lie detection examiner in Utah. In 1986, he and two colleagues conducted the first double-blind study within a prison system using this technology. Now, in asking me to have this guest on, Dr. Taylor, my faxer said he is regarded, Dr. Taylor, by many as the world's foremost authority on the subjects of subliminal perception, which wind into things like reverse speech, PSI phenomena, Carillion photography, sematics, many other things, forensic hypnosis, many things that we have talked about on this program. His work has been featured by Omni in their Omni audio experience, and it has been cited by numerous popular writers, including Lynn Schroeder, Sheila Ostrander in Super Learning 2000, and of course Ingo Swann. Ingo Swann, that's right, remote viewing Ingo Swann in your Nostradamus Factor. Dr. Eldon is listed in over a dozen Who's Who publications, has a PhD in clinical psychology, is currently the director of progressive awareness research in Medical Lake, Washington. His latest research, a pilot study conducted with the Duval County Public School System in Jacksonville, Florida, employed his technology and learning environment with incarcerated juveniles. Here to tell us about his work and talk about this controversial field is Dr. Eldon Taylor. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, sir. And all of that and 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee in a cheap restaurant.
Doctor, you're not on a portable phone, are you?
Actually, I am. Is that a problem?
Yeah, it is. Could I ask you to switch to a regular phone?
Sure. If you'll hold on 1 second, I'll do that.
I will always hold while people get off one of those old portables and onto a real telephone.
Is this better?
Oh, infinitely better, Doctor.
All right.
And if you have the other one hung up now, I presume.
Yeah, the other one is a headset.
I see.
One of those hands-free so that I can, maybe wipe the perspiration out of my hands, things of that nature.
All right, when I think about subliminal information, I think about the old days, and I say that when I think that at one time in America, for example, at the beginning of a movie or somewhere in a movie, they would put one frame of popcorn or something.
That's the James Vickery experiment that you're referring to, and allegedly it was the movie Picnic. Vickery had a theater in New Jersey. They flashed drink Coca-Cola, eat popcorn, and reported tremendous concession sales increases as a result. However, before we go off of that one, that's part of the myth that sometimes attenuates this whole field and helps stir up the controversy. All of the listeners should know that Vickery later denied that. He stated, indeed, that he had done it as a promotional gimmick to promote his new company that was selling these subliminal processors. And we really don't know, because the bottom line is there was a great backlash in America that led to congressional hearings and so on and so forth.
And it was outlawed, right?
Technically, the answer to that is no. Not until